this computer. Okay, so we're live. Okay, so let's start. Oh, okay, we have a few viewers already. Welcome, Salim, a regular viewer. Thank you so much for tuning in. And also, welcome, Muhammad Sulaiman. Thank you so much for tuning in. Yeah, as usual, yeah, you are allowed to be part of the discussion. You can ask questions. You can also type in your opinion. Good evening, Salim. All right, let's start. Okay, so learn, unlearn, and relearn, right, is the theme for Point of View Wednesday series. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Point of View series. Today is our 34th episode. Let me also reiterate the purpose of Point of View series. This is a series, or rather a sharing session, in hope that we are able to enlighten each other, and hopefully along the lines of getting the light bulb moment, so that perhaps we all could act upon for the betterment of ourselves and also others around us. So as usual, without further ado, let's introduce ourselves. All of us, we are corporate trainers. We're also coaches, mentors, and also speakers in our own specialization. So let's hear from each one of us about our area of focus. Let's start with Omar.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the show. And do we have any new viewers? If we do, welcome to the show. Yeah, so we're back again with another interesting topic. But before that, let me introduce myself. My name is Omar, and I am a trainer, a soft skill trainer. I used to be in corporate where I was dealing a lot with IT issues. And over the 20 over years of being in corporate, I realized that a lot of the issues that we face in corporate are communication related. So when I left corporate to get into training, I started to focus on training and also on the English language, because I realized that a lot of times English is not being used to communicate properly. So today I call myself a conversation coach. I help people develop confidence with English, and I also help people understand the mechanics behind communication and how to articulate your ideas better. Yeah, so with that, let me pass it on to Darren.
Thank you, Omar.
Hi, Darren.
Hi, guys. I'm Darren Suresh, founder of Awesome Tribes. If I talk about training, my area of focus would be leadership, customer service, communication, team building, gamifications. I focus on a lot of, I would say action-based learning or gamifications and action-based activities to enhance the learning experience, whether it's in a classroom scenario, whether it's online scenario, or whether it's in a team building scenario. So it doesn't really matter to me. And yes, I was also in the corporate. I left the corporate a good 10 years ago to venture into being an entrepreneur in training. Well, it was a bumpy road to begin with, ups and downs, but the lessons has been fantastic. Especially in the arena of team engagements and team building. I got to meet a lot of great people out there. Managed to learn lots of stuff from lots of masters and sifus out there. And definitely we are here today to share with you our experiences, and we hope that the online viewers out there, please do give in your comments and share with us your points of view as well, right? And thank you so much for having me on. Back to you, Jacqueline.
Right, thanks, Darren. And as for me, profession-wise, for 13 years, I work in learning and development department, and that pretty much molded my passion around learning and development. I work in a few companies. I left my 9-to-5 job in 2013, and I founded two companies basically, which is still currently running. And with that two companies, my area of focus is in image consultancy and personal and professional growth and development. For now, 70% of my business comes from corporate trainings, and the rest is one-on-one coaching and mentoring. right? So in this 34th episode of Point of View series, we are going to discuss about a subject that has been always of a interest in the area of gendered world. How men and women think differently. Your take, Omar.
Yeah, interesting topic, right? It's a never-ending discussion. Who's right, who's wrong, and a lot of times, you know, simple things to men are so complicated to women. But then, if you flip it around, women say simplest things to women. Men are making it so complicated. So this topic has always been going around in circles, and husband and wives fight, boyfriend girlfriends fight, brothers and sisters fight. You know, I've got 3 boys and 1 girl. And I remember growing up, I could say they kind of hated her. The boys hated the girl. And, you know, but in the end, when they're all grown, it's the girl who's really looking after all the other boys. So now everything's at peace. So today what we're going to do is we're going to turn to Darren, because Darren has some concepts to share about how the different minds of the genders work. And hopefully this will shed some light into why we think the way we think. And although things are different, with that understanding, we start to appreciate the differences, and you know, peace will reign, hopefully. Yeah. So Darren, you're saying that you have 2 concepts that you want to share, and let's hope that this can bring peace to these 2 genders, to this lovely relationship.
Thank you, Omar. Well, firstly, I'd like to establish that besides the title saying that it's men versus women, but it's not so much about who is better. It's about how we can be better together. So I'm going to share 2 concepts. And the first concept is a generalization of the mindset. And the second concept, we break it up into the different mindsets that both men and women have, which is scientifically proven, by the way. It's not something I came up with, right? So, okay, so when it comes to the general concept, I like to use the concept of the filtering system. So I make it simple because I take a lot of concepts from my lessons with NLP and EQ, and I put it together and I come up with something called the filtering system. Imagine your mind, right? You have several filters in front of you, right? That make up a lot of lessons in your life, and you see the world, or the state of the world is through this set of filters. Let me give you an example. Just imagine right now, you have the filter of your culture, where you came from, right? You have the filter of your set of beliefs. You have the filter of family. You have the filter of education. You have the filter of exposure, experience, and so much more. So I'm only naming the first few, which I guess is the most critical. And we've been put into this set of filters ever since we were young by our parents. I would say that 60% of your filters are put into your mind by your parents through culture and set of beliefs, and also family values. So we see the world different from other people. Hence why in the general conception of how people in general don't get along is because everybody comes from a different set of filters. I'm going to use myself as an example because I think all 3 of us have different sets of filters in where we come, where do we come from, right? Number 1, when it comes to culture, I'm a little bit of a misfit. Why misfit? You see, when I was 17 years old, my Chinese friend came to my house back in the good old Sitiawan, and we were celebrating Deepavali. And he looked at my family. One look at my family, he called me and said, "Hey, bro, come here. I said, "What's up, bro?" He said, "Bro, your family are not normal." Then I like, why would you say my family is not normal, right? Why such a comment? Well, I'll tell you why he thinks my family is not normal. I'll tell you why. Number 1, my father is Indian. Right, obviously lah, with the name of like Darren Suresh, you can't expect my father to be Mat Saleh, kan? So my father is Indian. My mother is Peranakan, Nyonya Baba Melaka. So I get mistaken for a Malay and a Mama quite easily. In fact, usually bulan puasa, on normal circumstances, I get usually caught eating outside. Yeah, I get tegur lah, orang cakap tegur lah. Yeah, hey, kenapa tak puasa kan? Macam tu. Yeah, so my dad is Hindu, so we celebrate Deepavali. Whenever Deepavali comes along, we all gather at my parents' house. Right now they're in Johor, so we go to Johor. I'm a Christian, I'm a Catholic, so Christmas, everything is at my place. Yeah, so whole family comes for Christmas. We have the tree, we have the presents, the whole works, right? The turkey, everything. And then my sister, she's married to a Chinese. So Chinese New Year, where do you think we go? Kung Fi Chai and give ang pao, and we have the reunion dinner and all, the whole works. And then my uncle, who is my mother's younger brother, married a Malay and converted to a Muslim even before I was born. So guess where I go for Hari Raya? My uncle's place. And I have Malay cousins, right? And to make my filtering even more of a misfit, my wife is Portuguese from Malacca, full Bumiputra status, yeah? And my kids, my 3 boys, are confused. You know why? Because they don't look anything like Indian boys. They may pass for any race except Indian. So when I was 17 and my friends saw my family, they're asking, why lah, bro? Why you say my family not normal? Then he said, bro, you see, you got one auntie wear chongsang. Then you got one auntie wear baju kurung. Then you got one more auntie wear sari. Bro, your family like Petronas advertisement, bro. So then I kind of like looked around and I saw what he meant. Yes, but to me, that was normal. To me, that was my filtering system and how I see the world. I didn't know that Indian family is not supposed to be this way. I was 17 years old. I thought that was my world until I visited a Indian friend and saw the major difference in my family and his family in comparison with culture. Because in my family, because my mom is Peranakan, we speak Malay most of the time. So like my house, Malay drama is like normal. You know, TV3 those days were like normal, everyday Malay drama going on. Like when I went to Indian house, they got Indian music, Indian drama, everything is Indian. So I was like culture shock. I was thinking, wow, I'm not that Indian, huh? So hence why my friends saw that difference, and immediately from the filter of culture, I am different. So that kind of like overlaps into the other culture in the set of beliefs. Because we come from a family where all religions and races are present, right? I really don't care whether you're Malay, Indian, Chinese, lion, or you come with purple polka dots all over. Basically, I don't care because all races existed in my family anyway. But I found out that is actually unique because not all Malaysian families are like mine. So my filtering system, maybe my tolerance level or my acceptance level is a little bit more higher because I really don't care about culture and religion because we have all of those cultures in my family anyway. So hence why it is impacted the way I see the world. And I see the world in different colors and array of possibilities and opportunities. But some people see the world rigidly because why? Culture and beliefs, as beautiful it can be, can also, right, as the saying goes, stunten your view of the world. Because sometimes, certain cultures, for example, maybe Jack, you may have some Chinese friend who might agree with this because we don't have Sunzo with us today, right? 20 years ago, a Chinese girl brings back an Indian boyfriend to the house, the family will, I tell you, pingsan, right? 20 years ago. Why? Cultural mismatch. How come my Chinese daughter brings back Indian boyfriend? Oh, you, almost like suicidal. But now, 20 years later, a Chinese girl can bring back an Indian boyfriend to the house because the level of acceptance and filtering has improved through the years. So the family can accept him. And even more if the Indian boy can speak Chinese. Suddenly, aha moment happened. Oh, I can accept. Why? So can speak Chinese, done, settle for you. So you see how that filtering, and we see the world through that set of filters. So that's the filtering system where the mindset, the way we think, is developed by all these filters. I also have this very interesting story to share with you on the filtering system and how it really can make it negative, right? But let me get you guys to share. Maybe that when I was sharing that triggered some memories or some things about your life that you want to share and talk about the filtering system on your point of view, from your point of view. Omar or Jacqueline?
Yeah, that's a very good way of putting across the meaning of filters. And so filters is actually the how we see things, right? When something is happening out there, it's just how it is. But when it gets to, by the time it gets to us, it gets through our value system, our cultural beliefs, our family beliefs, so many different layers of interpretation before we form an opinion. So I can, so it's a great way of putting it. And in a way, my family is not as diverse as yours, Darren. And I also have another friend, kind of like you, true Malaysian family, you know, Malay, Chinese, Indian, all mixed. But for me, perhaps because in those days, my parents were more English educated compared to their contemporaries who were less English educated. So we were exposed more to reading and to culture. When I say reading, I'm talking about reading English books and stuff like that. And we were speaking English more. So I was straddling between the Malay world and the English world, English speaking world, and things differently as well. Because I was I think I can say that I grew up less Malay because I was reading a lot of English books. I have Malay friends. I mean, we mess around and stuff like that. But my a lot of my interpretation was based on my English stories, right? And then it wasn't until I got to college where I had a lot of Malay friends that I became more Malay because I started to learn more about the Malay culture, and not just about the Malay culture, or rather about how a lot of Malays speak and think and view stuff. So I got exposed a little bit differently. Like for instance, you know, just language. I never spoke aku engkau. I never used the words aku engkau until I was in college. You know, so to me, when I was growing up, I was speaking a lot more English. And I grew up in Johor, in JB, in fact. And the Malay was a bit different. We never used aku and engkau. We would use for aku, for me, I would use the word kawan. You know, kawan and awak, which is so formal and so polite now, but in those days it was just casual. So when somebody uses aku engkau, my filter was that they were very, very rough. They were very rough. So when I hear people saying aku engkau, I consider them very rough people. But as I grew up, obviously that changed, you know, because I got exposed. So so I agree with you. How we see things are through very many different filters. And I think if we can understand this, we can have more empathy and understanding of why people see things differently. Yeah. How about you, Jack? You've got an interesting story because I know what your background is like. And,
yeah, I have a lot.
So it's incredible.
Thanks, Omar. Well, yeah, I have this like sort of like influx of information coming to me, and I don't know where to start. But when it comes to filtering system via culture, it's so much relevant as I was growing up, because, well, I mean, I can relate it now. Still, it's still happening out there. What I'm trying to say here is that this has got a very significant relations to what are you exposed with. When you are not, there's no chance for you to explore, or rather be exposed with the outside world. That's where then the culture that you are in, that's true for you, in every sense of your being, right? Okay, in Sabah, maybe I'll be talking, or I'll be explaining this in general, but as I was growing up, almost like there's this, if I can say this correctly, this is only from my opinion, yeah. For those who are watching, some of my Sabahan friends are watching now. There's some sort of like a stigma, almost like a stigma, that the people from Semenanjung, Malaysia, versus the Bumi Putra Sabah Sarawak, or Sabah, I can only say for Sabahan, right? So there's this stigma around that you know, I have to be careful of, right? And you know, in fact, now there's some portion of those still exist, but it is not perhaps widely mentioned or openly mentioned to the other culture. But it is behind the curtain. We do have that still, you know. So yeah, I totally believe, and that those are the things that make me, well, until now, that I still have to be aware of my coming from when I am facing a certain situation, that it needs me to have an open-minded, right? I need to play on, I need to activate my open-minded self, right? And it requires a lot of this realization and a deeper understanding, and not, and also because I am fortunate enough, because my line of work well, we deal with this, trying to understand each other, create common understanding, and I do have the skills and knowledge to do that. But some people, those people back in my hometown, for example, they don't have this kind of exposure. So the belief is pretty much just like when I was growing up, still, some of them, right? And I've been hearing this conversation around the same thing when I was growing up, and it's already now, it's like 2020. It's already, we are in the 21st century, right? But I can, when I'm hearing those conversation, I can sort of reflect better now, reflect better in a sense that they, well, more of like empathizing them. Okay, they believe what they believe because they didn't know anything else, right? So I was about to say any better, but nothing is better in this sense. It's like what's true for them, it's true for them, right? What do they believe?
Yeah.
It's always relevant for them. So talking about filtering system in relation to culture, I think this is the most crucial to be aware of, especially when you are going into a space or into an opinion of something that perhaps it needs you to heighten up your understanding around this person's filtering system.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I think we can go on and on about this filtering system. But how can we relate this back to the different genders, Darren?
Different what again? Different genders.
The different genders, the men and women, yes.
Yeah.
For me, before,
Well,
yeah. Continue, Darren.
sorry. So before we go to how different we are based on gender, just to wrap up or just to kind of like debrief on a little bit on the filtering system which you guys shared. There's actually other filters. What we touch on is probably just a set of beliefs and
Yeah.
culture. There's a lot. Education
Yeah.
helps. Yeah. More insight to see the world differently. Exposure, like what Jacqueline mentioned,
Yeah.
it helps a lot because it gives you a different level of thinking. Yeah, it does help. So this is that means if you actually watch or read Zach Ziglar, he says that the input going into your mind is responsible for the output coming out from your mouth. Yeah, so what you put in will eventually come out. So put in the right filters. So that negative story which I want to share with you on the filtering before we jump into men's brain and women's brain was when I was working in Singapore, my first job, I was staying in my sister's house in Tampines. And every day I had to pass a children's playground for to and fro from work. Because those days in Singapore, I used to take the public transport, the MRT and everything to work. So as I was coming back one day after night shift, I was a technician in Panasonic. I was working on the shifts. So I was coming back from night shift and I was sleepy, tired, and the only thing on my mind, go home, shower, sleep, because that same night I'm working. As I was passing by the children's playground, I saw this young Chinese mother feeding her 2-year-old daughter at the playground. Nothing unusual, mother feeding a child. But that kid was very hyperactive, was running all over the place, was jumping all over the place. The mother was chasing her with that bowl of food, you know. So I kind of like looked at it and I said, okay, you know, mother and daughter moment lah. Huh? Okay. But as I was passing by the children's playground, this young Chinese mother looked at me and saw an opportunity to convince a young daughter to eat. So she said in Mandarin, thinking that this Indian man may not understand Mandarin, but unfortunately for her, I do. So she said in Mandarin, if you don't eat, I call the Indian uncle come catch you. So the young Chinese girl, she looked at me and she got so afraid all the food went in. So the mother was very successful, but didn't the mother unintentionally, I guess, put a filter into the young daughter's head. And I guess that filter was Indian people can be quite scary. Yeah? So you see this actually builds up in time.
Yeah.
Because as that girl grows up, I hope that her filtering expands and there's more exposure. Because if not, worst case scenario, which has happened in Malaysia, I'm sure you know a few people, she will never have one Indian friend, and she also don't know why. Because it was there all the while. Indian people cannot be trusted.
Yeah.
Indian people are too scared. You know what I mean? So it becomes very negative if there's
Yeah.
no intervention. We must have intervention through life, through experiences, to education lah. Obviously, if
Yeah.
that doesn't happen, that's why you see in Malaysia, right? Even if we look at how different the community brought up. Maybe about 10, 15 years ago, if you go to a Chinese school, you will never find an Indian student or Malay student in the Chinese school. But now, if you go to a Chinese school, there are many Malay and Indian students in the Chinese school because the filtering system has expanded. Why? Because remember education? Because parents become more educated and exposed, and they're very open to allow their children to go for Chinese education, not like 20
Yeah.
years ago. Years ago, Chinese school was for the Chinese, Tamil school was for the Indians, and Kebangsaan is for the rest of us, right? So hence why it's very interesting. So the most negative point here is that if we do not have interventions to the filtering system, a negative outcome can be that that person grows up with that filtering. If you notice, negative point of view, I've met many graduates, young graduates, which I, in training, put them together in buddy systems. And there was one case, this Chinese girl and Malay girl, they were going to be buddies for 3 months because similar like the GIS program, it was that those days it was called the MDAC program. And she came to me and said, "Sir, can I change my buddy?" I said, "Why?" Because her buddy was a Malay girl with tudung and everything. I said, "Why?" "Sir, actually, I don't know what to talk to Malay people, huh?" Then I like, okay, where have you been your entire life? There's been Malay people all around, there's majority of the country. But when I talked to her, I found out it's actually not her fault. It's the fault of the filtering system given to her. Chinese kindergarten, Chinese primary school, stay in Chinese taman, Chinese cousins, Chinese friends, Chinese neighbors. There was no need for her to have any connection to Malay people. The only time she connected to a Malay person when on the way to USM, she bought nasi lemak from the Malay makcik. That's it. Scary, right? But there's extreme cases like this as well. So it does develop people to a level when they become graduates and go out there and they see nothing in common with people from other races. Scary. It happens in Malaysia, but that's the extreme and the most negative side, right? Where the filtering can go wrong. When the filtering goes right, most things happen very beautifully, right? So that's the
Right.
filtering system.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess relate.
Yeah.
Perhaps while listening to you, Darren, it's the same thing for men and women. I mean, like this filtering system culture around some culture, they putting men on a different level, or relevance in the family, or rather, putting, if you are a man, you should be able to do this as such and such. You should be able to provide as such and such. And as a woman, you need to be able to submissive, to submit yourself to the circumstances, your husband in particular, for example, or you have to act in a certain way because you are a woman, for example. So I
Yeah.
guess it's in the filtration comes from maybe the smaller scale of it, the culture in the family, on the bigger scale of it, in the culture imposed by the society surrounding that person.
Yeah, and I just want to share how this filtering affects me in terms of gender as well. It's in the way, you know how sometimes when you talk to people and you go, hey, who's the boss? And they go, oh, the boss is Puan something. They go, Amatila, Puan. You know, because they've got this concept about how a woman boss is, you know, something like that, right? But, and I think one of the biggest influences in your life, obviously, are your parents. For me, my mother was my mother was my best friend, you know, growing up at that time. My dad was hardly home, as usual, as usual as dads are. And he wasn't much for talking, and he was a very stern guy, kind of guy, you know, and as dads are most of the time at that time. And so I grew up being more afraid of men than of women. So this is not about how women and men behave, but this is how that kind of filter has affected me. So for a long time, if I had an English lecturer, sorry, an English, a male lecturer or a teacher or a boss, I'd be very intimidated. But if it was a lady, I was fine. You know, I'd be very friendly with the lady, a teacher or a lecturer or a boss. And I remember one time I was working, while I was a student, I was working as a programmer. I went to the bathroom and my boss was a guy named Herb, Herb Kekstad. I still remember his name. Big guy, you know, big bulky guy. His face was kind of like, who's that actor that always chases others? You know, top marks and things like that. Rough guy. I went to the I come in and pee at the next urinal. Herb. I'm like, oh my God, you know, I didn't know what to say. Just didn't know what to say. I was so terrified. Well, not terrified. I was like just out of place. But with my immediate lady boss, I remember splitting an eraser with her. You know, she was looking for an eraser and I took mine and I split it and I gave half of mine to her and he kept the other half. And she looked at me and she says, does this mean we're going steady? You know, and that kind of a relationship. So it was a lot of fun. Of course, it was a joke.
Yeah.
I mean, we were laughing about it. But yeah, for a very long time, I was more afraid of men, authoritative figures than women. And that's how my filter system was affected by my parents.
Very nice sharing. I like that. I like that portion where you actually bump into your boss in the toilet next when you were in peeing at the urinal. Common rule of thumb, Jacqueline, just in case you didn't know, guys, when we are peeing at the urinal, we do not have conversations with each other. We do not turn and look at each other and do not have conversations. That's the rule of thumb. I'm sure Jacqueline didn't know this, but we do not.
Do you do
We're
eye
not like
contact
women.
at least?
Women can be in their cubicles and talk about yesterday's
No.
drama. We don't do that.
Try not to.
How about eye contact? Do you do eye contact even?
No,
Not at all.
cannot. We don't look that way. Totally no. Yes, that's a
I did not
no-no
add
for us guys. That's the thing that they taught us when we were boys growing up. Yes, I like Omar's point of view about how the filtering system has affected the way you look at authority, right? Men and women. So it's true. So definitely interesting. The input that goes into your mind builds up this beautiful array of filters that it's not good or bad. It's just the way you are programmed or conditioned, if you want to use the word condition, to actually look at the world. If you remember yesterday's topic when both of you and Zaki was arguing about man's ego and well, that
Yeah, and
where
Omar
do you
kept
think
on
ego
mentioning
from?
women.
Yeah, where do you think ego came from? Ego comes from the information that got put into your mind, like what Jacqueline mentioned just now, right? Because in some society and some culture, they always put the man as the head of the family. So the man becomes the authority figure, the woman becomes the provider, so whatever, or the supporter. So it's also cultural. But now in, of course, 2020, women are just as educated, if not more educated than men, because they are, do you know the ratio in the universities is actually 70-30 women to men? There's more women getting educated compared to men. Do you know the ratio in the corporate world is 60-40 women to men? So interestingly enough, women are up there, women are leading the way. So there's no issue about that. So now, when you talk about, sorry, Omar,
Can I just add a couple more things?
Yeah, please,
A couple more things. Yeah, I think we're starting to realize that there's really the differentiation between men and women are really not based on gender. It's just based on individuals, you know. And we're starting to see that now when there are more women leaders, and a lot of them are outdoing the men. Like for instance, if you look at world leaders, especially in the COVID countries, the countries that have male leaders are doing poorly compared to the countries that are being led by the women. Or rather, how shall I say this? The countries that are doing well compared to the countries that are not doing well, right? If you take these two, the ones that are doing well are led more by women than by men. Well, that's one thing. But I got to share this. If we talk about filter differences, right? How people see the different genders. I was in Hong Kong one time and I was in a taxi and we were caught in this traffic jam in a tunnel, right? And the taxi driver, Chinese guy, Hong Kong guy, was complaining about the driver in front for driving too slowly. And it was a bumper to bumper traffic. But what happened was, so this is our car, and this is the car in front, and then the car in front of them, right? So the car in front of that car in front of us had moved up, so there was a gap. So this taxi driver was getting upset that the car in front of us was not moving fast enough. And he said this in English. He says, woman driver, woman driver. You know, he was just complaining about her. Yeah, this was in the evening, couldn't really see. And at one point, we managed to overtake, right? So as we were overtaking, I looked left, and it was a guy. And I said, hey, man driving. And he looked at him and went, drive like woman. You can't win, right?
We can.
His filter was that women are bad drivers.
Right. So I think this is happening all over the world, and that's how, if I can say, crucial filtration system is. It gets us to verbalize it, and it becomes a stigma that jeopardizing the harmony of our society, right? So let me also acknowledge our audience. I have this perspective from Diana, our friend. She said, agreed. We can only expand our minds if we get the opportunities to expand our world. I believe same for men.
Well said, yes.
Yeah. And a
Awesome.
few more of our audience, thank you so much for tuning in. Right. You can also ask questions, or you can also type in your comments or perspective in the comment section. Right, Darren.
Nice. Okay, so let's go into how women and men think differently when it comes to the mind. Okay, please bear with me. I need to explain this concept: the man's brain versus the women's brain. Now, let's look at the man's brain first. Okay, according to Harvard University research, this is how a man's brain in general works. Of course, there's always exceptions to the rule, but this is in general. Yeah, man, we have boxes for everything in our mind. There is a box for sports. There is a box for the car. There is a box for the family. There is the box for work. There is the box for our hobbies. And we go into those boxes, we take out the subject matter, and we explore and we talk about them the whole day. Like if myself and Omar want to talk about sports, we will be talking about sports the whole day. Most times, less connection to other subject matter, but as we move into another subject matter, because usually what happens with men, when we start talking about sports, we tend to go into politics, because there's always politics in sports. And then we'll close the topic on the sports, and then we actually move into a different box, which is politics. So the boxes, the rule of thumb, the boxes do not touch unless we want to go to another box. And inside our mind, for the knowledge of women, there is one box called the nothing box. There is nothing in the box. It's empty, it's dark. And we men love to go into the nothing box and just be in there. Example, you can see signs of when a man is in the nothing box is when a man sits in front of a TV with the remote in the hand and switches to the channels, not even watching any show actually. He's just going through the channel. And then a woman would approach the man and say, look at him and say, what are you thinking? Then the man would say, nothing. And the woman look at, how? For women, you cannot be thinking of nothing. And the woman wants to know, but how can you be thinking about nothing about? What are you thinking about? Nothing. I'm just flipping to the channels. I'm not doing anything. I'm not thinking of anything. It's just totally blank up there. Then the woman will say, but if you're thinking of nothing, you will be dead, right? Because you won't have a pulse. You must be thinking of something. And then the woman inserts a thought into the nothing box. The woman say, you thinking of your ex-girlfriend, And suddenly the nothing box gets filled with thoughts of our ex-girlfriend, and she just ruined it for us. We go into the nothing box to distress. Men do that. They just get into a blank. I found that even I do that. Like after I finish a whole day of training or series of training, I come home. I would like to be left alone for half an hour, 1 hour, just chill. I lie down on my bed, or I watch TV, or read a magazine, and my wife knows me well enough not to disturb me in that half an hour, and my kids knows me well enough to leave Papa alone for half an hour, because I go into my nothing box to distress. and men do that. So man has boxes for every single thing, and we go into those boxes and we talk about it and we close it back, and there's a nothing box. There's that special box for us, right? Which many women don't understand. Now, let's move into the women's mind. The women's mind does not have boxes at all. The woman's mind is like a ball of wire. Everything is connected to everything. The car is connected to the money is connected to your mother, the mother is connected to your children. Everything is connected. It's like a ball of wire. It's like
And
a highway.
always connected. Finally, it's connected to the other woman.
Yes, it's connected everywhere, right? And it's hard to understand. And they are driven and they're generated by a power, because men are said to be more logical and practical creatures, right? By research, we use more the left hemisphere of our brain more than women do. Women use both hemispheres, but women are said to be logical, practical, plus there's one guiding power,
Emotion,
the
gut
power
feel.
of emotion. Okay, emotion. So that's hence why the two sides of the brains are used for women, and they go into that all the time. Everything. I give you an example. Then maybe I think Omar can share his experience and Jack can share your experience. A long time ago, my mom came to my house in KL, and she was staying with us during the Puasa month. And my mom loves to cook, so she cooks up a storm every other day. That's her way of showing her love. You know, older people, they tunjuk sayang dengan memasak untuk anak. You know, and my mom cooks fantastic, you know, peranakan food and all that food. I was having a feast for 2 weeks, fantastic. Then she went home. So my wife took over the cooking, and she cooked that particular day a dinner, and she cooked chicken curry. So I wanted to give a compliment to my wife. I said to her, listen to the words, Jacqueline. I said to her, your chicken curry today is nice, very good, very delicious. Immediately she got angry. You know why? Because she didn't pick up any word. She only picked up one word, today. Oh, hari ni je lah. Hari lain tak sedap lah.
Notice
Your
that.
mother came, oh my God, and you were licking the plate literally. So today, only today, my chicken curry. You see, she connected the chicken curry to my mother. You understand? And only a woman can do this. Men fail at this very badly. So that's how connected women.
Just now when you were saying it, I know it already is because of the word today.
You see, you picked it up, but maybe Omar was thinking, oh, chicken curry, not bad. So Omar, you want to share your experiences with this?
Yeah. Well, yeah, because women will tend to, you know, it's not just today. They link it to everything else, right? They link it to everything else. They look at one comment and they tend to link it to everything else. And at the end of the day, it's always about who's the other woman? Who's the other woman? You know. So that's a funny one. I cannot get over it, and it's a common problem. You know, it's just such a common problem.
Right. Okay.
Go ahead. Yeah.
The only words that we want to hear when we link that to another woman, like for example, like you said just now, right? Is the reassurance. Like doesn't matter million times of reassurance that you are still mine. You are still the only one. You know. That's it. That's the only thing that we want to hear. Yeah, but apparently
Yes,
it becomes sometimes it becomes the source of all those chaos. It's because the man did not have the same understanding. It's just about
yes,
you just have
understanding.
to
I like
answer
that
this.
word.
Or whatever it is, whatever the sentences are, the answer that we want to hear is just these two words. No, it's not true. No, it's not. No one else. It's only you. You know, that's all. That's it. And it will solve everything. I hope so. Can I have a few more women to agree with me on that?
Okay, to jump on that fact that Jacqueline, so because man's brain and women's brain are different, and so even though we have the same set of filters and same system pretty much, but we see the world differently and we are connected differently, that develops our communication preference. Women are very subjective in their communication preference compared to men, right? Women can say one thing and mean another thing totally, right? It's the tone, it's the actually the intonation of her voice that you catch it. If you are smart enough to catch it, but most times we guys, we fail. Example, right? I come back from home, I come back from work and I see my wife in the kitchen with the muka masam. So I ask my wife, "Are you okay?" And she looked at me and said, okay. Then I walked off. I said, oh, okay. So I went and watched TV. Half an hour later, she walked into the hall. "You are married to me 20 years and still don't understand my heart. You know, I asked you whether you were okay and you said you were okay. But actually, when she's okay, it means that she's not okay. You understand or not?" So it's the subjective. They want you to figure it out. Women have to understand this very simple concept. Women out there, we men cannot do this. We don't have that ability to look at subjective matter and interpret it. We cannot read your mind. You see, but women always think that men can read their mind. We cannot. I've been married 20 years. Let me tell you this, I still fail, right? At times, because cannot. We are just the way our mind works are so different. Like example, I'm thinking, Omar, you get caught doing this. You go out with for your woman for romantic dinner, sitting at the table, candlelight dinner and all that. Suddenly, a beautiful girl passes by and it catches your view. It's not that you look at her, she passed in front of you. You know what I mean? So innocently, you were looking towards that direction and your woman saw you and the woman asked you, that girl pretty, huh? Do not answer. It's a trap. Because if she would have seen that woman, she's seen that woman and she tells you that that woman pretty, she knows that woman is pretty. She's seeking for confirmation. So there's only two ways to answer this question. I think myself and Omar were quite experienced. We've been there, so we can do it. But this goes out to all the single guys. Number one, deny the fact that you saw the woman. You say, what woman? I didn't see anyone. But most times it doesn't work. Number two, turn it around and make it about her. What Jacqueline said was right. So you look at her and say, yeah, she's pretty, but I only got eyes for you. Done. Settle. Okay? Make it about her. Turn it around. Because she, you know she, yeah. So yeah, very subjective in the way they put things through. So, but having said that, let's give women the acknowledgement. They have two skill sets that men have, but women are just so much better at this. Jacqueline, can you guess what are the two skill sets?
Empathy.
No? It's there. Men can have just as much as empathy as women, sometimes more.
I think the gut feel.
Please don't say multitasking. Huh?
Yeah, well, gut feel. We are pretty much sensitive in that sense. And yeah,
having burger. You know, I saw this when I was driving. Driving your car, eating burger and putting on lipstick is not multitasking. It's dangerous. Okay, men don't do this. Only women will do this. Right? She can put on makeup in the car and still eat at the same time. That's dangerous. Okay, number one, skill set. Jacqueline, you have it, because I noticed that through my many points of view with you, you pick up on this a lot. You tend to focus a lot about intuition, gerak hati, how you feel, and you connect it to you all the time. You always start your conversation like, when it comes to me, when it comes to how I would see myself, when it comes to reflecting about it, you're using a lot of intuition words, right? And men also got intuition, but men's intuition are not as sharp as women's intuition. Intuition for women is God-given. God has given you a processing system that is totally updated. You're using Windows 10. With men's intuition system is still on Windows XP. We have it, but it's not as sharp. Example, right, Jacqueline? You're close to your mom? Are you close to your mom?
Yes.
Okay. When you call your mother, because your mom's in Sabah, right? So when you call your mother, is she in Sabah?
Yes, she is in Sabah.
Okay. One phone call, don't even have to say, not even just a voice call. Maybe you had a hard day. You know, you're just moody and you're grumpy. You just say hello and start talking to your mother. From her voice, your mother know something is wrong. She look at you, she asks you, why girl? What happened? You had a hard day. Intuition, boom, just like that.
My mom knows to call.
Yeah.
I just text my
Yeah, okay,
mom.
text or whatever,
Yeah,
but
she knows already.
yeah. Yeah. You see, intuition. Intuition. A son can stand in front of the mother and start. I saw this with my wife and my kids. My youngest boy came in front of his mother, my wife, and he started to talk, started to stop and talk and talk. When he went off, my wife looked at me and said, "He's lying." I said, "How do you know?" "I think he's telling the truth." "No, he's lying." And true enough, she was right. Just like that. Intuition. A mother will always knows when the child is lying to her. You cannot lie to your mother. Even at my age now, right? I cannot lie to my mother. You understand that? I could probably get past my dad, but not my mom. You see? She knows when I'm lying, right? Even though I'm already like a father of three and been married for 20 years, I cannot lie to my mother. Women's intuition, very sharp. Women are just like Jedis from Star Wars. They sense the force, right? They are better at this. They know things, right? Men know, but we're not there yet. But women, my God, God given, you have GPS system. You know when something is not right, you sense it, right? Gerak hati. Right. That's one intuition. Do you know the second one?
Except
This is
when
going to be very.
the car is broken.
Sorry? What was that, Omar?
Oh.
Our life is got interrupted,
Uh,
but it's okay because this is recorded, so I can post this later on from.
Yeah.
no, I
Omar,
was
you
just
said
saying,
something just
Darren,
now?
that
Yeah.
no. Yeah, I was just saying, you were saying that the intuition is very strong, except when the car is broken. When the car rosak,
Yeah.
they can never
No,
figure it out, right?
they don't see past mechanical stuff. So maybe when it comes to mechanical stuff, the intuition gets blocked somehow. Yeah. I noticed that as well. Right?
That's
Yeah.
actually because of the conditioning or the filtering system. Because when it comes to those
Exactly.
part of our life, like those mechanical things, technical things that we brought up in in an environment where okay, that's actually for men. But no, I mean, if you really, I realize now, like fixing my things at home. I used to think that I can't do that, but when I tried, I can actually fix those things, right? So that
Yeah,
makes me realize maybe because of the conditioning.
So
yeah,
that's
and
called
when you,
the switch of the filtering.
yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and Darren, when you talk about intuition, again, Jack, I agree, it's about conditioning because women grew up in a very relationship type environment. The discussions and everything is all relationship like, whereas men hardly talk about relationships or emotions. They talk about mechanical stuff. So their sensitivity towards emotional intuition is less. So when you say women are more intuitive, I tend to be, because I believe it's because of conditioning, because there are men who have very strong intuitions as well, especially fathers. Yeah, that's how I feel.
Let me
And
tell you about.
I
Okay,
was going to
sorry.
say something. Oh, sorry, hang on, just one more thing. I was pretty conscious about this conditioning, especially about driving. Um, and I know that women, people always say women are bad drivers. So when my daughter started driving, in fact, she started drive. I teach my kids to drive very early, um, because I would get arthritis attacks. So I told myself I better teach them how to drive in case I can't drive, right? So they always start driving before the age of the legal age. So maybe I shouldn't admit that now. But anyway, I made sure that I told her that she was a good driver. So every time she drove well, I would reinforce that. I would tell her, "You're a great driver. You're very good at reversing and looking at rearview mirrors and stuff like that." And today she's pretty good. So when she sees women who are trying to back up the car and stuff like that and having trouble, she can't understand why, because she can do it. So I think that's one proof that I have that is, again, conditioning.
Uh,
It
yeah,
is. It is.
How we grow
I
up.
It
have.
can be. It can be. It can
Yeah,
be. Yeah.
since we're in this subject of intuition, I have a secret that I want to reveal. I actually, me and
Aha.
my mom, me and my mom has got this I think ability that I always want to get her expertise. Like all my ex before, I'll show to my mom their pictures, and then my mom will look at the face and my mom will tell me, Like for example, okay, this man you have to be careful because when you angry, this man will get angrier. So don't make him angry. That's one. Or my mom will tell, okay, from what I see, this man, but she will put some kind of disclaimer. She will say, okay, this is what I feel, but it might not be true. But most of the time, it's true. That's why I always ask for her sort of like opinion. So this guy is uh, very kind-hearted. You know, you just have to take care of his feelings. You know, those kind of stuff. And it's totally true. And a few instances that I discovered that whatever she said, it has been really true for that person. So perhaps that's how it is, right? You know, the intuition part of a woman.
Yeah, and from that particular explanation, Uma, Jacqueline just reveals that she has many exes. So,
Not many, a few. Yeah.
okay, yeah.
Because they,
So
they don't pass,
back to the
because they
sorry.
don't pass the mother's filter. Because they don't pass the mother's
Ah,
filter.
No, my mom
cannot,
won't
cannot.
filter. My mom won't say that yes, go for it or no. It's just about me. It's like for me, like going to see apa tu tukang tukang baca, you know, the palm reader.
Baca batin, tilik, yeah.
Yeah, just
Fortune
to
teller, right?
fortune teller. Yeah, it's just for me to like have this some sense, and my mom will know that. And but she always, like I said just now, she won't say that yes or no. She knows how am I. She will say yes
Yeah,
until no if it's no for me. She say no. I'll
yeah,
say yes if it's yes for me. But I find it quite accurate. That's what I'm trying to say. So totally
yeah.
based on the,
Intuition.
yeah, intuition and just looking at
Yeah.
the pictures. Or if my mom, some of them have met my mom, so even more
Some
like
of them, huh?
confirming, yeah, some of them.
Very nice. Thank you, Jacqueline. You really shared your secret there. Nice. Okay, so we go to the second skill that women are good at and better than men. Can you guess what's the second skill?
I have no idea because you said it's not multitasking.
No, it's not.
Okay.
It's memory recall.
Oh
Hmm,
my
Women,
God.
interesting.
men remember what we want to remember. Women, on the other hand, will remember
Yeah.
everything. Memory
Yes.
recall. Let me tell you
Yes.
why, Jacqueline. There's
Mm,
a science behind it. You see, according to the research done, every memory that you have for women, you have an emotion that's attached to it, and it gets embedded into your subconscious at the back of your mind, and it stays there for a long time. In fact, women has this ability to bring out a memory that happened 10 years ago and still feel that same level of emotions she had back then. Right? I give you an example. I had a friend. She worked with me about 10 years, 11 years ago, and we had a very nasty boss. Okay, this boss was like iblis lah, setan lah, this like really bad boss. He was terrible. Okay, he picked on her. He was very rude. He used F language. Terrible fella. So we never liked him. But she had it more because she was the PA. So kenal lah. So what happened was I met her for teh tarik session like maybe I think last year before the COVID, and we were having this teh tarik session, and I wanted to disturb her lah. So I said to her, her name is Murni. Hey Murni, remember 10 years ago we had this boss? Remember that? She looked at me, Darren, stop it. Jangan Darren, jangan sebut nama dia Darren. Stop it Darren, no. I said, remember Ernie? Oh my God Darren, oh aku geramnya Darren. Kalau aku jumpa je Darren, aku lenyit-lenyit dengan kita aku. So she brought up a memory 10 years ago and she felt the same emotions. Only a woman can do this. We men cannot do this. You understand? So women's
yeah,
memory recall is so powerful, right? They remember the small details right up to big ones,
you are
right?
totally right in that. That example reminds me of my own memory. However, I think by you have some kind of education around it, perhaps will get you to get over it. As in, if it's a bad memory, you know it was the past, and that can only the, how to say, you can only have that if you have that certain level of awareness through that education, like through
Yeah,
reading,
it
through,
helps. It helps. Yeah, but in general, women memory recall are much more powerful. You see, like for example, I always advise the young guys who are still single. I said, when you get married, learn this skill right now. You never win an argument with a woman. You thought you won, you just lost. Because we men would have an argument with you and we forget about it. Women will not forget the argument they lost, and they will wait like a crocodile in the water for the right moment, and they'll gather all the information for the next 2 years. 2 years down the road, you have an argument with her. She opened 2 years story. That's it, man. You're done. You never win an argument with a woman because of that memory recall. She remembers every single detail. I remember once about many years ago, I think 2 years ago, I had this argument with my wife. We were doing Christmas shopping. Now, my wife's family is rather large. She has like, with brothers, siblings, and kids and all that, like 20 of them in the family. So doing Christmas shopping is like going for team building. You know,
oh,
so we had this small argument about cost, it's about the costing. And she looked at me and she said, you know what? We had the same argument. I said, huh? When did we have this argument? December 24th, 1999. You
my
remember an
goodness.
argument we had in 1999? I don't remember the argument we had last week. Yeah. We had the argument. You know what? You're wearing the checkered shirt and the blue jeans. You remember what I wore on the day we had the argument? I don't even have that baju anymore. Never ever play with the mindset. They remember everything. Hence why that argument about women boss and men boss. Do you know 75% of women surveyed said they prefer to have a man boss? Women said this, not
Yeah,
men.
yeah. Well, I
Yeah,
totally agree with that.
yeah. Because
Even
why?
myself, I say that.
We men kuat pelupa. We forget. Women boss, they remember everything you said to them. Yeah. So two skills, intuition and memory recall. This is the skill set that women have, which are better than men. We can argue that man has caught up. We can argue, but I tell you the truth, we are nowhere near the women. So hence why, back to you, Omar, you mentioned why women make better leaders is because they activate that two skill set. The intuition was very good, and the memory recall, they use history to really manage their countries, and hence why they are better off. Like New Zealand, right? New Zealand is like, she's like fantastic, right? Look at her, the way she manages her country, very emotional, very memory based, very intuitive. So we men fail at this when it comes to these two skill set that women have, men lack, or we fail most times in comparison to women lah. Yeah, if you want to see it that way.
I love your summary. In a way, as a woman, I love the summary. But to end our session, because it's already 1 hour, I guess it's about understanding. For us to have this subject matter, it is not to dictate what's good or what's bad. It's basically to have this information and use it to our advantage of for a better relationship or better understanding,
Yeah,
right, Omar?
yeah,
Yeah, that's interesting. I really especially like the discussion about the filter system, and and I think with this understanding, it's quite clear that it's the conditioning that we grew up with, and I think over time we'll start to realize that it's not about the differences are not really in the genders, but in the individuals. It's how we grew up with the training that we had and the exposure that we got, like Diana was saying. We can only expand our minds if we get more opportunities to expand our world. So exposure and education are, I think, two of the biggest saviors, saving grace for us to live a harmonious life.
All right.
yeah,
So we'll see you again on Wednesday next week with a fresh new topic. The invisible hamster wheel, conditioning of the mind. Perhaps you'd like to say something about that topic for next week, Darren.
Yeah, so next week is going to be another interesting topic. I read this in a book, and I like to bring this forward to for discussion's sake. The invisible hamster wheel talks about how our mind are conditioned. It's like maybe the next level of the filtering system, how our mind are conditioned in such a way that that's how we see our set of beliefs, and from that set of beliefs we make decisions. So next week we're going to be talking a lot about that.
All right, and that's exactly that we're going to do every Wednesday. It's really about relearn, unlearn, and learn, unlearn, and relearn. All right, so goodbye, everyone. I'll see you again on Wednesday. Bye.